Yeah. So you do a lot of different stuff then. Obviously, cab refurbs, heads, pedals. I'm assuming guitar work. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, there's just nobody in Richmond that's really doing that. You know, there's a couple repair guys, but um, most of the most talented techs kind of in the area when I was even growing up, it was like, okay, you've got this one guy who's got a really shitty attitude, and he's good, and then it's like, and then you got another guy who lives like an hour and a half south, just a kid trying to get your amp fixed, and you're like, what do I do? You know, and there was no community of those guys talking either. They didn't. Musicians talk to each other. These guys didn't. You know, everybody's kind of in their own little world. And so I remember I took my amp to a guy, and he just didn't. He knew how to. He could have fixed it. He wouldn't turn it all the way up to make the problem that it was having. And I just remember being a kid, like 21 years old or something, having this powerhouse of a bass amplifier and just like being bummed that I just couldn't use it, and I didn't know what to do, and I didn't want to sell it because I'd take a loss on it, and who's going to want to buy a broken amp? And I just stared at this thing for years, and I just was upset that it was beating me, and eventually uh, I was just going to sell it, and the guy was playing it and it sounded so good, and I was like, I don't know that I can sell it. Let me here, just keep jamming on it. And I turned the volume way the fuck up and saw like a tube arc and fucking pop and sizzle and glow. And I was like, hold on. I just took it out and it just worked. Like the thing, it was a Mesa 400 plus, so it could work without one of the
Right.
fucking
Sure.
12 power tubes in it. So, yeah, I was just kind of like blown away. Like all this time, this thing sat there beating me. That's all it was. And the only reason the other tech couldn't do it was he just would not put it under the operating conditions of what that thing was supposed to go through. Like not even at a rehearsal. So he was just doing this shit at his bench. And like I said,
Hmm.
the guy that didn't get it, two guys actually didn't figure it out. But both of them talented. Both of them really smart, educated, good at problem solving. But none of those guys were gigging musicians. And that's the big difference is like I this thing is gonna be played on 10. Like,
Right.
well, why? I know it's a 600-watt bass amp, and it's gonna piss everybody off, but that's the way we're gonna use it. So when I get an amplifier in or a guitar, you know, it needs to stay in tune when you pick it up by the whammy bar and shake it. The
Hmm.
amplifier needs to work on 10. It needs to work not only at full volume on 10, it needs to work on 10 on stage at Warp Tour when it's 115 degrees outside in the desert of Las Vegas. You know, it's like that's the shit that makes the biggest difference
For
with
an hour straight.
I think what I
Yeah.
anticipate these amps going through. And of course, like the stuff I'm fixing, not everybody's doing that. But I want it to work like that. And I think that it's not really hard to do. And this is the difference between uh, just knowing what can come loose, what to secure in an amp, what components, hey, pay attention to the heat rating. So am I just scabbing a few pieces in to get this through a gig in somebody's bedroom? It's like, no, this is going to get loaded in and out of a truck from a hot stage to a truck where it's like 10 degrees outside. It was 100 in the club, and it's going to be handled by roadies and thrown into something. It's like people don't think about that because, when you get your first amp, you're trying to baby it. And it's like, but no, when you get to the professional level, you're not babying anything. I don't care what it is. If it's like your pristine $4,000 guitar, it's getting thrown,
Right.
at gigs. So you just got to make sure that it works.
Are you doing like repair work as a kind of a side business then now, like for clients? Are you
Yeah,
taking in
yeah,
commissions to
yeah.
do stuff?
I'm
Awesome.
taking in work, not open to the public. I mean, it's pretty much you email me and we talk about it, or if it's a custom job or something, I'll have a phone call, and it's just a matter of like, what do you want? What do you want it to sound like? Tell me what you're listening to, and I kind of deduce things based on that. It's like, well, what's your favorite guitar tone? Because that's the big one. It's like, well, just give me a high gain amp. It's like, I need more than that. What's your favorite
Right.
Saxon record? You know, give me
You don't
the
have one?
juicy. Yeah, it's
You
like
don't have one?
give me.
Call me later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Call me back when you figure it out. But that's kind of like that's important to get in somebody's playing style because I mean, should I give you an example for different tones? Like I know what suits me, of course, because
Hmm.
I'm with myself 24/7, and I modded this amp uh, that I was renting out to somebody for a tour, and they came in and I let them use my basement as like kind of like a pre-production spot, and so this is part of my studio. I've got a couple other rooms that I can isolate cabs and put drums in and stuff. But so anyway, this band comes in from the West Coast. They're starting a tour here in Virginia, and they set up and they jam and everything. And the guitar player's like, "I need more distortion. This is the most it's got?" And I'm sitting there like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like any more and it's going to sound awful. Like, no. And so it had a higher gain mode on it, but I was like, no, I'm going to play brutal death metal with this. You're telling me that's not enough? And he was like, nah. So we turned it all the way up and put it in the higher gain mode, and the band rehearsed and it sounded great. And I was just like, God damn. I was just like, that doesn't work for me. Like that's too
Hmm.
much. The articulation, but it's not about what I want. It's about what the player wants. But me listening to him play it with all that distortion sounded awesome. So I didn't vibe with it the same way. So that's kind of why I really want to get inside. Like if I'm doing something for you, I want to get in your head, and I want to know what your right hand is doing, how hard you hit the strings, what gauge strings you pick with. Do you like PAFs or do you like Duncan distortions? Like, because all these things kind of matter when you get into the nuance of like making an amp for somebody. Because if it sounds great for me, that might not be what somebody wants. Because I
I can
play
relate
with,
to you 1,000,000% because
yeah,
of the guitar companies and stuff, and there's so many things, and it's the hardest thing as a business owner. I don't care what your business is to let go of that personal connection of that product, right? Whatever that may be. So in making guitars and in working through even your design process, right? Well, it's like trying to step out of what I would love to have on me as an instrument and what you need, and disconnecting from, okay, well, I would never do that, but
yeah,
what is it that helps get you to where you need to be? And it's hard because it's, especially, when you're talking about going into production for something potentially in the future, you think like, okay, I'm going to ask everybody what they want. And then you try to please as many of those people as you can, when ultimately what you should have done in the first place is just went with your gut, because you're the one that's been doing it for so long that ultimately you probably know what's best, and
that's very true. Yeah, and you started the hard way doing only the custom stuff because I remember that, and I remember giving you the stuff that I wanted, and I just meant, man, he's doing hundreds of these.
and I,
Like, and
There's that
every
much.
single
Wow.
one's got a different spec sheet.
it
And it's like,
was I learned a
God, it's
lot
gotta be
and what
tough.
not to do.
Yeah.
And that's a thing about business is, people just think like, oh, you run a business and you learn all these things and you know
Yep.
what to do, and it's like 99.9% of running a business is learning what not to do,
That's
Mhm.
and
true. That's
shit to
true.
never do again. So and I've been wanting to ask this whole time. So I'm assuming you're to the point now where you have no idea how many cabinets you have, and you have no, like, if I asked you how many cabs do you have, how many heads do you have, you'd be like, 30
I
something.
would, it would, yeah, that's exactly what the answer. It would be like 30 some cabinets, 50 heads,
It's a mini
something.
museum.
Yeah.
It's a mini
It's,
museum in there.
and they're scattered all over the place. It's like I got some in here, some in the workshop. There's, like I said, there's a couple other rooms in here with different gear. Like, so this is kind of like this is the stuff I want to be close to all the time.
Sure.
I got the Lemmy rig back there. I don't know how many of those they made, but there's not many. It took me forever to get that one, like the biggest stack. There's five 415s, but four of them are the Lenny stack is one of six, but there's two 415 full stacks with Marshall majors on top of them. I mean, it was like just shit. When I'm toured for all these years, I just scoped out the deals in every town. Like I didn't overpay for any of this stuff. You know, it was always like haggling and trying to find the stuff. Like I'm searching for the shit, and somebody's like, "Oh, my aunt's got this in her basement," and I'm like, I'm going over there to go find it
Let's
and to see
go.
what it
Let's
is.
do it. Let's do it.
Yeah, and you go down a lot of dead ends, and you miss out on a lot of sales too. But you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So I mean,
That is
just
absolutely
really
right.
aggressive. Yeah, just really aggressively like hunting this stuff down. But like I'm an enthusiast, man. I really like the sound of these amplifiers, and it kind of seems like excessive when you think about like why do you need so many? It's like I guess I'm justifying it in my own head. It's like, well, but I just don't just need to have the proverbial YouTuber stack of like the same five high gain amps that the next guy's got. It's like I want to know the intricate differences of like what really makes a 72 sound different from the 73, and why do two amps from 74 sound different, and because Marshall's just like Fenders, everything's got their own little quirks, and I just started going down the rabbit hole to figure that out, and it's made me a better builder, or at least more in tune to what I want to build. Uh, like that was the other thing too. Is every guitar player chases tone, and I just got deeper and deeper and deeper into it, and so this is basically my reference, of what I'm going for. But there's more than just Marshall. I got the only Mesa stuff I have is bass amps. Never could really get along with the rectifiers. I've played through plenty of them and toured and gigged with them before, but I've got some Angle stuff, Fender stuff, Laney. I'm sure there's some other oddballs in there, some crates, Ampegs. You know, Crate got dismissed back in the day, and God, you could find that stuff so cheap.
Why
And
did Crate get
it,
dismissed? I didn't even know that actually. That Crate got
I think this is my guess, and I'll let Brent chime in on
yeah.
his guess. But I think in a lot of the early 90s stuff, they were very solid state heavy. And
yeah,
everyone started making that transition from solid state to tube stuff.
Oh yeah.
And they got buried by PV.
yeah, yeah. And plus, like Crate was kind of had a similar folly to maybe even you could even say it was like BC Rich, where they did so much low end stuff that that's just what it became synonymous with,
Yeah.
and and kind of like which is a shame because I'm sure you remember those old NJ series BC Riches,
They're
man. We
killer.
were buying them. What were we buying them for? $150, $200?
Dude, I was
I
buying
remember.
NJ Deluxes for $200 back in the day, and now those things are $2,000.
Wow.
They're
think
killer
got
instruments.
people got over the fact that they got lumped in with this cheap stuff and realized that
Mhm.
those were actually really good. I think, especially when people realized, like, oh, they weren't crappy guitars. We just weren't setting them up right.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I wish I had all the stuff that I sold from BC Rich because, man,
Oh,
I
imagine.
You and me
I
both.
would go think about that, like, oh man, what that Ironbird that I sold for $225, what is that going for now? And then you just
Another
look it up
zero.
and you're like, nope. You
Yep.
just close the screen. You're like,
Yeah.
uh-uh.
Yeah. When you mentioned like having so many of these things and whatnot, I've actually had that same discussion with my wife on stuff, and she'll be like, "Why do you need
Yeah.
all these guitars? You got guitar cases out to the wall," and it was you kind of hit it on the head, and I don't even know if you kind of glanced over it, but it's more than just having them. Like you said, this is
Yeah.
my room, this is my comfort room. When they're around you, it's like that guy who has a garage full of hot rods.
You just
Well, you
wonder why
can't
he has them.
you
Yeah.
can't jump in and drive them all, but it's the fact you can be in the presence of those things, and they're kind of comforting. When I don't care what your hobby is, when you're that passionate about something, you can turn around and look at them, and something about them is pacifying and enjoyable. Just the history and everything that's into it, especially when you're hands on with probably a vast majority of the stuff on that wall behind you.
I've been inside every single piece of gear that's up here. Like, opened it up. I've got notes, a notebook full of everything in here. And one thing that I would really like to do at some point is there's a ton of, like, we all do it for anything we look at. If we're trying to learn something on the internet, you've got like a website, and especially now, a lot of the guys that were providing this free information on whatever it could be. Like, if you're just looking up how to wire a transformer, or how to work on a motorcycle or whatever. A lot of these people that just had this history up online, when those old guys die and those sites lapse and just get taken away, that information is just gone.
Right.
And there's a lot of stuff that I learned early on, and those points of references have disappeared. Like, the forum is gone, or all the links in the forum are dead. And I'd really like to kind of like pay it forward in some way by it's at some point being able to kind of put all of this stuff together and just put it out there and have a reference site. And some of the information that's available now on Marshall's is close to, it'll never be complete, but it's overwhelming how the intricacies that you can get into. And I just want to help fill those gaps and just paint like a complete story for everything. And plus, when you're repairing stuff like guitars and everything, I mean, I got a ton of guitars too, and it's absurd. But at the same time, when somebody brings me something to work on and they go, I don't know what this is, and I can just pick it up and say, well, it's a 76 because this is the last year of the pancake body Les Paul, and it's still got the 3-piece neck. And they're not going to do 3-piece maple necks when it comes into around early 80s and everything like that. And it's like, so I know how to fix it and how to work on it and what it's comprised of and what it's supposed to be when you restore it. And that's important too, is, I'll fix commercial shit, whatever. Like, just, I got a new acoustic solid state amp. I just need it to work. Sure. But when you bring me something like, a classic guitar or a vintage amplifier, I'm going to do my best as a custodian of this piece of equipment to make sure it's period correct and to kind of honor its history. But there's a difference between all of it. There's stuff in here that's like museum grade, and then there's shit that's like, this has been on the road and has huge holes drilled on the back of it.
Right.
Like this thing, this one might do a job. This other one is like, this is the one that needs to be in the museum kind of thing. So I'm kind of honoring, I guess, both. It's all meant to be played. That's the most important part. Fuck all these like guitars.
Music, Brent? With like, do you still play music in bands with all this stuff you have hanging around?
Yeah, I mean, I play in a band, U.S. Bastards, and we're same shit. It's just huge walls of Marshall stacks, and I've got an obsession with Marshall. So it's like the bass amp is a Marshall. The bass player has 2 full stacks, and it's all fucking like rare shit. And at the end of the day, it's fun to do that. You don't need any of that stuff to be an awesome band. You just have to write great songs. So I think it's important to make that distinction. The gear does not make the band. But, when you grow up looking at AC/DC and, the Yngwie Malmsteen backline and Slayer and all that stuff, and you just see this wall of heavy amplifiers and Marshalls in particular, it's like, that's what I want to emulate,
Yeah, the gear doesn't make the band, but the image sure doesn't hurt.
That's definitely true.
Yes,
marketing aspect of it for sure.
I think back on that same stuff, and all the way back to when you would see go. There was so many bands that would have that bigger than life persona, and I think it's a dying part of music. I think to a huge degree, So to me, it's just cool that someone's still kind of carrying a torch on something like that, because I'm all for it. I think jumping up and playing in a band on stage, taking your pod up there and throwing it on and playing in some cargo shorts and whatever, it's got its place and whatever, but I'm just of that age group where I love to go and I love to see someone bring something to the table, right? Like you can get up there and you can kick ass with your band, but when you're taking it serious enough to have like, okay, this is the persona and the presence that this band is going to have on stage.
100%.
It's a pain in the ass to load all that shit, but at the same time, it's like
you would know,
you got to give them a show, and that's
right.
That early '90s era of I don't give a fuck. We're just gonna play guitar as guys and teens and jeans and t-shirts or whatever. It doesn't work the same way now. Record labels aren't scouting bands for talent. They're scouting artists for marketability.
Mm-hmm.
What does this kid have that I can sell? It's very predatory and it's fucked up and it's gross, but so the amount of records you sell is not directly related to the quality of your music, unfortunately. So it's like you do have to come up with, what can I bring to the table that's different than the band before me and the band after me, and it's just your show. Like, what is your show? So I mean, part of our show in the Bastards is like, well, it's a punk rock band. Try to be, musically a little bit different and unique in some way. It's all rock and roll, so whatever. We're not the best, but you have this stage show that nobody's going to copy, because nobody's going to come behind me with 8 Marshall stacks. So at least we've got that thing, unless
right.
Airborne's not going to be in competition with us, so because they're rolling like, I think something absurd like 12 or 13 stacks. I mean, it's awesome. It's awesome.
Right.
But that's part of their show. It's this big rock and roll behemoth that's happening, and I like that. So that's what we're trying to do. I mean, and there's a lot of metal guys that always kind of poo-pooed stuff like King Diamond because it's over the top, like theatrical. The guys that like the guttural vocals. Well, I don't like King Diamond because it's high pitched and it's whatever. It's like, well, yeah, but maybe it's not for you. Like that's a theatrical thing. It is a show. It's a production, and it's really cool. At least I think.
I'd love
it. He gives you the show, though. That's the thing. That's what King Diamond does.
Yeah.
He gives you the show.
Yep. I'd almost like the more, for me personally, like the more entrenched you become in that, to me is almost, there's a little bit more magnetism for me. I used to never get into Cradle of Filth back, because coming out of the death metal time, and then, like Cradle and Demu and these bands that were a little bit more theatrical and black metal or whatever, I was just like, I'm gonna skip it because I just like death metal. And then now, as time, I'm kind of liking back on stuff, and it's every element, and it's like that trifecta of music, right? So you've got your music and your theatrics and your story, and
I think so. And I think it's easy for a young musician to just be like, well, that whole thing about playing a character we talked about, like it's so easy to dismiss all that and be like, well, I'm just going to be me and I'm too fucking cool to do any of this stuff. So we're not even going to try. We're just going to, the merit of our songs is going to be what it's like. Okay, sure. Well, that's admirable. We all feel that way at some point, but you're doing the same thing that 1,000 other bands are doing. And it's like, how do you really stand out? And I think it's okay to think about a show, because you're at the end of the day, it's like musicians in general, especially like rock and metal guys, they don't want to look at themselves as entertainers and performers. It's like, well, what are you doing it for?
Right.
It's like you're on stage because you want a little bit of attention. Of course you want to play music, and that's the core of all of us is the same. Like we're yearning to do that, to create and to write. And we want to bring that out to the world, whether people like it or not, and that's the way it should be. But I don't think there's any shame in saying, well, I want to put on a good show. And if that means I got to step out of my comfort zone and paint a picture on stage, so be it. So some are more entrenched than others. Like I said, Bastards, it's not really that, we're not wearing costumes or anything like that, but we're still trying to figure out. I'm like, how do I make this more entertaining? And you get stuck. You're like, well, do I light fucking candles on stage? Do I light incense or something? Do I put a skull on top of my amp? Like, what can I do? And like I saw this band. I'm talking about music, man. So thanks for having me on. Like I saw this band in Richmond, and we were making fun of it. We were just riding their ass and just being shitheads to them. And they were setting up all this stuff because that's what we were making fun of them about. It's like, oh, this band's taking forever. You know, Jesus Christ, changeover is 20 minutes, guys. Get it together. And they're setting up all these fucking like ghillie suit things over the drums and fucking spider webs and stuff and candles and smoke machines and stupid fucking DIY can lights that were green and everything. And it was so absurd. And then, but when the band actually started playing and the strobes were going off, I went, oh man, well, it was lame to see them set it up. But now that I'm seeing the finished product as it's happening, it's like, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. That's a pretty good commitment because you're doing it all yourself. And it kind of changed. And I was like, maybe we were riding them too hard. You know, like maybe we were being jerks, you know, because they put a lot into it. And I was just like, hey, I don't even like the music. So much going on that it's at least entertaining to watch because this stands out way beyond the other three bands that were on the bill that night. So, because they're the only ones I remember. So, yeah, there's something to be said about doing a show. And of course, I have mad respect for that they kept doing it even after we were all like making fun of them because we couldn't be the only ones because musicians are like, you know, a lot of us are gatekeepers in a way, bullies and shit. You know, they exist in every facet, whether it's, you know, guys that buy boats, motorcycles, whatever. But band dudes, yeah, we're jerks to each other sometimes.
I think you kind of, but there's a value in that. I think, you know, you can't stand on a soapbox and not expect tomatoes to be chucked at you at some point, right? I mean,
yeah, we even talked about that before, like you and I. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's probably no different than when you were in Gwar. I'm sure you heard people from the outside say some pretty negative whatever.
Oh yeah.
So the thicker your skin becomes, the easier it is to, you know, brush off those people and not give two shits about the people who don't believe in you, right? So and focus on those who do.
And anytime you're a public figure, like you almost have to expect like you're going to eat shit at some point in time, and you're going to have shit thrown at you, and you're going to have keyboard warriors who like will say stuff about you online, but you know they'll never approach you and hash it out and stuff like that. That's almost par for the course nowadays, especially if you do what like Chad and I do here. It's almost expected.
Yeah, I think they need to bring bullying back a little bit.
Hey, I like it. It's not your job to make everyone like you, you know, and people get lost, especially fucking today with social media. They get really wrapped up in that, you know, trying to always win the argument in the political Facebook thread. And it's just like, man, back off. Like, don't even worry about it. You're not going to change somebody's mind overnight. The best thing you can do is just conduct yourself in the way you see fit and fuck everybody else if they don't like it, you know? And oh man, as soon as you start backpedaling, people fucking eat you alive.
Yep.
That's the biggest thing. All of the guys with the biggest controversies that are still playing the biggest stages, a lot of it's because they didn't backpedal and they just went for it. You know, if there's blood in the water, the fucking sharks will come.
And some of the happiest people and most well-rounded people I've ever met were people who didn't care so much about what other people thought, who just, you know, planned on like pleasing themselves before they did others, you know, and planned to like be true to their own convictions, whether other people liked it or not. And they weren't so concerned about pleasing everybody because it's really, it's impossible to please everybody.
It's impossible and it's unnecessary, really. Like, you know, again, to find your niche. And, you know, the shitty part of like, I think about it right now with online is it's a cow pile mentality, right? So one guy has a shit comment and then 14 other guys got to be like, oh, if I jump on that comment, it's true. It's easy, you know, and all the negativity shines so much brighter than positivity, it seems like. But, you know, just gotta really just kind of not give a shit when someone's got a problem. You know, if you got a problem, go tune out, man. No one needs to hear it. And
what's unfortunate is that, you know, social media sort of became like a modern day Jerry Springer too. Like, you know, it's all about, you know, drama and making hit pieces about people and stuff like that. And, you know, some of these guys go online and they make hit pieces about people they've never even met in person, people who they don't know on a personal level, but somehow they must have more time in their hands than I do because I don't have time for that. So
that's the nature of the internet.
It's pretty gross. Like the whole, especially with like, and another reason why in the music business that I've definitely like just stopped being concerned with it to a degree. You know, I love playing music, and I'm going to continue to tour and do records and stuff like that. I'm not going to stop that, but I have something else that provides me income for a living, and I'm happy doing it, and I don't need to give it up to pursue a dream or whatever. So, but just the dark side of all that is like, man, these tabloids and stuff, you know, I mean, shit, you look at fucking Metal Sucks and Metal Injection or whatever. I can't remember which was which, but I had like a lot of friends that were working there.
Yeah.
But you see some of the headlines now, and it really is like tabloid stuff. How can I reduce what somebody said into a conflict and make it seem like they're trying to be, you know, something they're not, or whatever? It's just, man, you know, like, because if you could do an interview, granted you guys won't, but somebody could even take, I don't know, one sentence out of context on this whole thing and blow it up into something else that it's not, you know.
For sure.
Maybe
it's a cheap form of content, really, is what it is. It's a very cheap form of content.
It's all headline driven. I mean, people don't read stories anymore. They just read headlines, and it's sad, but that's the state of the world, I guess.
For real.
So, awesome. So, you know, in kind of in synapse of all this, so and I knew this before, but I think everyone's pretty much able to gather this up now that Brent's kind of a full throttle guy. Like, he just does what he does, and he does it to the full of his heart, and you can tell. I mean, you're passionate about what you do, you know, and I knew right away when I met you that, you know, there was no personality blanket. It was this is Brent, and Brent's all in. And it's very, very commendable. I don't think there's enough people that are that confident in themselves to be that way. And so, you know, that's a huge kudos to you for being that way. And I think, you know, as a result, you've left a mark that has influenced a shit ton of people. So hats off to you for that, my friend.
Commendable, for sure.
It's very kind, man. I appreciate that.
So I definitely want to thank you for, you know, taking all this time to sit down and kind of give us some insight on.
Thank you, Brent. Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Seriously, thank you.
On who you are and what makes you tick, man.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Like I said, we talk about gear and music. I can talk about this shit all day. You know, I don't really have any hobbies outside of working, and you know, that's the other thing. If we want to talk about construction, framing, and electrical systems, we can do that too. But you know, more people are interested in this.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yep, you are right. Cool, brother. Well, thanks again for sitting in on an episode with us. It's been an awesome time. I've had a great time. So I can't thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, brother. Well, take care of yourself, and we will talk to you soon.
All right, man.